Hi everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're going to talk about The Last of Us Season 1. So this is going to be a spoiler review. I'm just going to kind of give my little quick thoughts about it. I'm not going to go into very much detail because I didn't play the game, and the show itself, the meat of the show is fairly, there's not much to it, I guess I'll say. So I just kind of want to give my thoughts on mostly the final episode and some of the other overall thoughts about the show. So if you've seen it, let me know what you think about the show in the comments down below. And if you've played the game, how well do you think they adapted the video game? Does this officially break the video game curse? Let me know about that in the comments down below. So as always, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And let's begin. So, The Last of Us. Oh, what an interesting show. I like it. I think overall I have positive feelings about it, but I have some negatives about it. So, overall, the story is actually, I feel far more comfortable not classifying the show as a zombie show because there are so few actual instances where they have to deal with the zombies or the infected. So this show is not a real zombie show because it's not a zombie virus. It is a fungal infection. It's the cordyceps virus. It is a fungus that has mutated / evolved because of global warming to be able to affect humans. So it effectively is a zombie outbreak. The world has ended and it's been 20 years on. So that's mostly where some of the logic of the indecisions or whatever kind of, I'll explain it when I get to it. So the show basically revolves around this guy Joel and this young girl Ellie. So Joel, in the beginning of the outbreak, in the beginning of the apocalypse, loses his daughter. She's killed by military because they're killing basically anyone who could potentially be infected in order to try to force lower the numbers. And for those 20 years after the initial outbreak and after Joel's daughter dies, he's basically kind of a walking husk. He's doing any and everything he can to survive. He's completely ruthless, but like he's dead on the inside because his reason for living was his daughter, having already lost his wife and everything. So the whole show is kind of structured around him meeting Ellie and effectively creating this new surrogate daughter relationship with her. So the whole show, the priority of the story is emotional development, character development, bringing these characters together. So that's why the bulk of the show is able to focus on the drama while ignoring the action. Because the video game, I only played the first bit of it. Basically, in the video game, I get up to the point where Sarah dies and then I checked out. I couldn't keep playing because I realized this is just not going to be a feel-good game and it's just not my taste. So I just completely bailed on it. But I did get that far in the game. So I kind of recognize that in the game, there's a lot more instances of probably fighting the infected and stuff like that. But in the show, they clearly just lean towards the drama. Because my first main point about the show, and also my first actual complaint, is there are so few infected. There's like, it is a zombie show categorically, but there's like no zombies. So to me, that's a huge letdown because there are shows, I don't want to compare it to The Walking Dead, but The Walking Dead is the longest form zombie entertainment that we have. And it shows this, at least in the first few seasons, it shows this really, really well done and like thought out like ability to balance the drama of the characters and their development with the action of the zombies and the end of the world. Partially, I think this show doesn't do that because it's 20 years on. So everybody's used to it. Like there's few surprises, and most of the probably the big hordes or like the areas that are densely populated with infected, they've either been wiped out or those infected have been driven off somewhere else, or people have just like at this point they have managed to deal with it. So the infected are even less of a threat than the zombies are in later seasons of Walking Dead. So it's kind of disappointing because like you want the drama, you want the character development, you want all the emotional stuff, but that should be like cherry topped, or you know, the cherry on top should be the action. But this show clearly doesn't prioritize that. There's a fair amount of human on human action and violence and stuff, but not nearly as much with the infected that I would have preferred. So one of the best episodes of the season and most controversial is episode 3, where we kind of change, or the story kind of changes a little bit of the main story, at least based, from the game between the characters Bill and Frank. So in the game, Frank, I think it was Frank, or it was Bill. It was one of them was still alive and was just one of the stops that you go on as you're traversing the countryside with Ellie. And in the show, he's dead. So they decide to show the entire backstory on his life, essentially. Him and Frank met each other, fell in love, and had like an entire life. Basically like 16 years together, because they like found each other 4 years after the beginning of the apocalypse. So they roughly had 16 years together. And we get that entire hour, one of the longest episodes of the season, going through their relationship and seeing like the different points in it and stuff, and seeing how they met Joel and Tess. And we get to see how they met Joel and Tess and how they're kind of surviving in this world. And then by the end of it, like they were already old when it started. So 20 years on, they're like in their upper 70s, possibly even 80s. And one of them gets some sort of degenerative disease, either cancer or something like that, where basically he's slowly dying. So they basically choose to go out together. Like one isn't going to leave the other, so they commit suicide. So the whole episode is incredibly emotional. It detracts from Joel and Ellie. Like we don't see them basically the entire episode. And it's very self-contained. So a lot of people online were complaining about that. But I kind of understand that apart from filling in the backstory, a lot of RPG games and exploratory games like The Last of Us often have this mechanic where they give you extra details about the world and like the world building by random placement of letters or random placards, just, random information that's scattered throughout the world. So my understanding is Last of Us has a lot of these like journal entries and letters just from people around the world. So you eventually read a letter and it kind of gives you some of this backstory, but the entire idea is that there are millions of backstories. There's billions of tiny little stories and stuff that are happening in this world, and those letters and notes and stuff kind of gives you a peek into it. So this whole episode was basically a reference to that, while setting up these characters in this location that Joel and Ellie has to go to, but while also like giving us context for the letter that is ultimately left for Joel. Because that entire episode, that entire arc, basically the point of it in terms of the main story was for somebody that Joel knew and trusted and had helped to tell him basically, we still have a purpose as the type of people we are. We are supposed to be protectors and we have to help someone, that kind of thing. So the thought was that he was going to protect Tess, but Tess has died. She died in the first episode. So now all he has is Ellie. So the entire episode, the whole sentiment of it is supposed to prime us for this emotional connection to Ellie that Joel builds. And I think it does do that, but they don't really sit in that connection that well. Because a few episodes later, when they kind of start to get closer, we start to recognize they have built that surrogate father-daughter bond and stuff like that, we don't actually live in that. We get a time jump, and then it's just like, okay, that's their relationship now. And that's a little disappointing to me, because if we're going to take an entire episode to focus on other characters purely in order to set up the emotional like message for Joel, and then when we get that, we don't sit with it, that left me feeling disappointed. Because those time jumps we lose, and then the time jumps make us lose those kind of interactions in those small parts. And then the final episode kind of happens very fast. The last events of the game and of the show like just happened very fast to me. So I feel emotionally unsatisfied. And I think that's why ultimately for the last episode, I'm left feeling like, I'm feeling a little ripped off. And I don't think I had the emotional reaction that the creators wanted us to have. Because I also did some research online and saw the same scene in the video game. And the way the video game seems to set it up, it makes a little bit more sense that Joel will go on this murder rampage. Because While yes, he's going. So towards the end, they eventually get to the hospital because Ellie is immune and she's supposed to be the secret to the cure. So they get to this hospital where they're going to supposedly like take blood from her. They probably assume it was just going to be like take some samples or whatever and figure it out. But they need to cut open her brain in order to get the virus, the way the virus works and all this stuff. So effectively, she needs to die in order for them to even have a chance to maybe synthesize a cure. And Joel is just like, no, because again, this is like a PTSD trigger for him. He couldn't save Sarah, so he absolutely has to save Ellie. So they were trying to basically get him out of the facility, and he basically murders every single person in there. He goes 100% Terminator. He goes like the most like ridiculous levels of Rick Grimes. Like he goes absolutely apeshit and murders all of these people, and then like some of them he didn't really have to kill, but he technically did because they probably would have came back up behind him and stuff like that. But just the way it happens, I could accept it and I could even call it a justifiable act because they didn't ask Ellie for permission. They didn't see if she was okay with it or anything. They were just going to kill her for this experiment. So that's just messed up. But my issue comes when we go through all of that. Joel kills everybody. He gets Ellie out. He saves her and stuff. And then they get away. And instead of just explaining to her that they were going to just kill her and they wasn't giving him any option, then instead of doing that, he lies to her. He tells her this whole fluffy story of there's other immunes. They're not looking for a cure anymore. And then raiders came in and killed everybody, blah, blah, blah. He just, see, I've also seen a lot of debates online. People are like, what Joe did isn't bad. It's not bad or whatever. He's, not bad and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, but if what he did wasn't bad, why did he lie? That is where I'm left at with the series, I think. I'm really looking forward to season 2 because I know what happens in the second game. And because the internet lost their mind when the game came out. So I'm pretty aware of what happens, at least in the beginning of it. Yeah. So killing that doctor, I kind of understand directorial things that they did now as a result. And in comparison to what people did to the doctor in the game with like the flamethrower and stuff like that, Joe just popping them real fast was almost like it could have been way more dramatic if they wanted it to be, but it didn't have to be. But I think that's honestly where I'm left with the show. I am not as satisfied as I could be because there wasn't a good balance of action and drama. The drama was good. It hit all the right notes. But I'm also left very conflicted on the final episode because the way it was done, the way it was carried out in the show, made me feel like Joel was the bad guy. He was completely not justified in doing what he did, especially when Marlene said, is this a decision Ellie would make or whatever? Because in my head, at that moment, it should have been like, okay, go back in there. I'm taking Ellie away, and when she wakes up, I'll explain it to her, and she can come back tomorrow if she really wants to die for this potential or whatever. Even though he had already killed the doctor, and that was probably like the main guy who was going to do all the stuff, so he probably blew that anyway. But like that would have been like a lawful good kind of decision. That's how I would have seen it. But Joel did the chaotic neutral thing. I don't even know. Him just killing Marlene outright, no hesitation, just nothing like that, and then lying to Ellie. Even killing Marlene, I would have been able to kind of get behind. It's just the lying to Ellie part. I think it corrupts this relationship that we spent this entire show building, and then we really didn't truly build it into the last 2 or 3 episodes. So to then have him immediately do something that in my mind destroys the relationship, it leaves me like, man. But I don't know if the show or the game was designed to leave you with a satisfying ending. Maybe it was like some Robert Kirkman level stuff of just endless depression. I don't know. So that's just kind of how I feel about it. I don't think Joel is a good guy. I'm officially not on his side. If what I think happens is actually going to happen and they don't change it up majorly, I won't shed a tear. Like, I won't care. If it was a good action, why did he lie? So let me know in the comments down below. Have you played the video game? Did you watch the show? How do you feel about it? And how do you feel about my ultimate conclusion? If what Joel did was good, why did he lie? Do you all have any answers for that for me? If you do, let me know about them in the comments down below. So as always, make sure you hit that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already, and I will talk to you all next time. Peace.